said, I'm going to learn. My dad and my grandmother both were alive, and I looked to them and I said, how do I change it? And then, they kept me in the middle path, which is the path of Islam. And you have to open up the Quran and read it for yourself. The first word in the Quran is read. And there are hundreds of times that God says, learn. Why aren't we told to learn? Question. We are killed if we question something. We're not allowed to speak. I wanted to change all that. And I wanted to be different. I wanted to bring that light of Islam, the knowledge, to everybody else who seemed, for me, they were not following Islam. And then I left Saudi Arabia and I come to America and I find that I go to my local mosque after 9/11 because I want to be a part of this community. And what I heard in the Irvine Mosque, and I'm there with my son and my daughter, and we've just come from Saudi Arabia. We're in this beautiful country that we love, and I hear, the Yahud, they are not your friends, they are cursed in the Quran. And then I'm told things that, this is my country, the FBI is coming for you. No, they're not. They come for me if I'm a criminal, and that's fine. That's law and order. I challenged that. And then my story began. Because I challenged, because I spoke for my religion, for my people, and to say, no, I know my religion. It's not this religion. We are not told to hate. This will answer your question. I didn't know the word anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, until I moved to America. I have lived in Saudi Arabia, I have lived in Dubai, in Malaysia, in Pakistan, England. I've never heard of. Yes, I was in England with my father, who was a diplomat, and he told me to be careful because Pakistan does not have ties with India and Israel. And when I ended up having an Indian friend and an Israeli friend, my father quietly said, so you went to the mandir and you have a friend called Joel from Israel. And I said, yes. And I was so scared. He didn't say anything. In fact, that young man, after we left England, arrived in Pakistan because he had lost touch with the two best friends that he had, my sister and I. And my father was in the government of Pakistan. He was a minister. And he got a call from Karachi airport saying, sir, your daughter has a friend who's called Joel. He's from here, from Israel. And he would like to see your daughters. Now imagine that. I was young, a teenager. And my father called and said, so you have that gentleman friend from England? He's here to see you. I hate to tell you, I'd love to have him enter Pakistan, but we don't have any ties with Israel. But you can go to the Karachi airport and say nicely, hello, welcome, and sorry you have to go, but you'll see him sometime. That was enlightened Islam. That was enlightened Islam. Those were the leaders of India and Pakistan, of 600 years of Muslim leadership. Their inspiration were Allama Iqbal and Rumi and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. All these scholars that they used to listen to did not preach Jew hatred. They did not even preach Hindu hatred. They preached coexistence. And that is why you have, so many Muslims living in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, that even though we've had partition, the Jews were not in the middle. They weren't blamed for it. Neither were the British blamed for it, because we were enlightened Muslims, and we were told, fix yourselves. Reckon with what is wrong with you. Roll up your sleeves and get to work. And so when I came here in 1997, a young mother, having seen Saudi Arabia and lived through all these moments of crisis with my faith, moments of crisis with, where am I? What am I doing as a woman? My father told me, your best allies are the people of the book, the Jews and Christians. I never heard that. So I'm a Muslim. I know my Quran, I know my religion. My father wrote a book on the Prophet's life, peace be upon him, and Saudi Arabia printed 6 million copies of it and gave it to the entire world. And in that, he talks about the Prophet of Islam being the interfaith leader, the first one in the Muslim world. When he was attacked, and he was attacked by his own people in Makkah, God told him, send your people to the Christian king in Najashi, in Abyssinia, for refuge. He won't refuse them. Read that verse in the Quran about Jesus and Maryam. He did that, and they got refuge. The second time that his people and he were being attacked, God gave him a commandment. Move to the Medina, the Jewish tribes, they will give you refuge. Where is the Jew hatred? There can be differences in history, I don't doubt that, because we've never really been there in 632 AD to see that. And they didn't really have internet, we don't record it. There can be differences, but God knows this Jew hatred that I was being taught and my children were being taught. You know, my son would call me on Fridays early on when he went to UCLA, and he would say, Mom, you know, I went to this mosque and I'm not feeling good. Like, I don't know why they're talking about Jews. And he meant that, Mom, they're teaching me to hate Jews, and my best friends are Jews. That is the struggle that we had, our children growing up in this extremist society. Now, you might want to look up, why did they do that? Because they did have a different worldview. Unfortunately, my Arab brethren, they have this Arab hatred of Jews. And they have it more because it's kind of a sibling rivalry, Ishmael and Isaac, and that was passed on from the years of European history, where the Christians were converted to Islam, and they were already anti-Semitic. They brought it into the Arab world. You remember the expulsion of the Jewish people from their homeland, from all the Arab countries? I tell you, that did not happen in Pakistan. I was just in Pakistan a couple of years ago, and I saw the last Jewish person buried in the Pakistani graveyard. It was 1984. They were not expelled from India. They were not expelled from that whole region. They chose to go. That is why we go to Israel and we meet Pakistani Jews. So there is a reason why we are here saying Muslims are not all the same. We are diverse. We are not monolithic. It's unfair to us to put us all in this one box. Arabs are our brethren. And when we speak to our Palestinian brothers and sisters, you know what we tell them? They're Ahle Kitab. Let's learn to live together. How long are we going to put our children in distress for something that we can find solutions for? Look at Zeba, South Asians. We're the largest majority of Muslims in America. We are, actually Pakistanis are 35% of the Muslims, and the Arabs are 19% or less. Why are they manipulating the dialogue in mosques and teaching our children to hate and to be radicalized? I've been told by Muslim Students Associations when I entered to talk about women's empowerment, Islam doesn't empower women. I said, oh yeah? Okay, let's debate it. Where does Allah say that? And I said, would you deny that the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, was asked to marry him by a woman who was 35 years older than him. She was a businesswoman, very successful, and she was standing side by side with men. She hired him. So you're telling me Islam doesn't empower women? What Islam are you talking about, young man? But that is our struggle, that our children are being brainwashed. One of the girls who was working for us, intern from Johns Hopkins, never been outside of the US. When we were at the kibbutz, we bore witness to the rape committed on October 7th, when our community was saying things like they deserved it, the Jews deserved it. We said, we're going to go and be witness. That girl, she sent me the Quran and said, it wasn't the Quran, it was a Hamas manifesto, and it was on a website in America. She regurgitated the whole thing and said, Mrs. Ali, you're going to go to hell. You and your organization will go to hell. You have to, you know the Yahud are your enemies. These are the cursed people. And you tell me, can I be silent? No, I have a moral compass.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
be happy to answer your question,
Yes,
my brother.
please.
We will answer your question. I will not leave without answering your question. This whole issue of what does it say in the Quran? Why does my brother in the mosque tell me you cannot trust the Jews and Christians, you cannot eat with them because that's what the Quran says. There are verses in Quran that were translated to say something, insinuate that we cannot trust the Jews and Christians. And you know that the Quran is not chronologically set. It's like, you know, Makkah, and it's not, it's Medina, and then Makkah, and then Medina. So a lot of times people don't know what was sent to Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, and when. Now ISIS, you know, this is how they recruited. Since I was working on countering terrorism, ISIS would say that Allah says, seek them out and kill them. And it's in the Quran. Absolutely, it's in the Quran. There was a time when Prophet is standing outside Makkah and the pagans are pelting him, they're killing his people, and he's hesitant to take out the sword because at that time he was just a preacher. He had not become this kind of a leader. And he waited for divine intervention. He wanted to hear something from God, and then God told him, go back to your Kaaba, the house of Abraham. He was cleaning out the house of Abraham of idols because can't have idols. He was a monotheist. And God said, you know, he said, I don't want to take out my sword. These are my own Najdis. These are my people. And Allah said, seek them out and kill them. Now what did ISIS do? ISIS took that verse and said, wherever the infidels are, seek them out and kill them. We all know how sometimes religious verses are misinterpreted. And that was the rallying cry for the ISIS, the Daesh, and all of those people, the terrorist organizations that have been recruiting and saying, go kill them. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I really need to say this. I was at a conference a few weeks ago where the Catholic community had this conference, and the topic was Catholics and anti-Semitism, facing the past and shaping the future. And we know the church was also one of the purveyors of anti-Semitism in our world. But the difference for the Muslims is we don't have a leadership that's atoning that. After Vatican II, the Nostra Aetas, and they said anti-Semitism is a sin. And later Pope John Paul openly declared, you know, if you are an anti-Semite, you cannot be a Christian. So in our work, we want to do that. That is where we are heading. We want it to be said from the mosques, and we want some of the sermons regulated so that we have a clear undertaking that there will not be hate taught from us. So this exists, and we need a strong Muslim leadership. And I always tell Anila, we are the leaders we've been waiting for. So we want to start that leadership, like a Shura Council, and we want to give the order, the fatwas, if you might say. Thank you.
On 9/11, when I stood up for moderate Muslims, the Muslim Ummah in America, and I said that was against Islam, that the hijackers did not represent Islam, and I created this page. It was called Reclaim Islam. There were people who were against me, and they were American. They were not the Pakistanis or the Bangladeshis or the Moroccans outside of America. They were the American Muslims. A lot of them said, no, this happened because America has all these foreign policies. Does that ring a bell? Because October 7th, they were saying the same thing. They were saying the Jews deserved it. And this is because of the oppression that they have caused on the Palestinians for 77 years. And so they deserved this to happen to women? No, no one deserves that. You heard Zeba's story. You've heard the stories of all our great-grandparents and parents having gone through bloody partitions. No woman deserves that to happen to her. And if you're talking about Islam and you say, yes, it's a resistance, then you know what, if you're a Muslim, you don't touch a woman, an elder, or a baby. You don't bait them, you don't cut their stomachs, and you don't cut their breasts and play with them and use the holiest words in Allahu Akbar. A woman, when we were in Israel, she's an Indian woman, she came to us and she said, why are you here? Because there was nobody there. We were the only Muslim group that went there. And she looked at me and, she was from India and Hyderabad. That's where my parents were from. And we started talking in the same language. And she said, these Israelis are really nice. Why are you guys doing this to them? We were so ashamed at that moment. I said, will you record this? I want you to tell people. And she recorded it, I posted it, and she said, don't do this in the name of Allah. Don't desecrate those words. And when we saw those films, that people in our community were saying, Israel made it up. They are like that. And some of them, they told us, well, that's what happens when you oppress. Well, Pakistan killed many Bangladeshis. Would that be okay? Afghanistan and Pakistan are at the brink of war today. Would it be okay for Pakistan to do that, or Afghanistan to do that to me and women like me? And that's the question I raised in front of all the imams, who were, the whole world was shocked that we stood up and we said, Ahle Kitab, there is no justification for October 7th in Islam. Please don't dirty our religion. And they looked at me, and this is in Washington, D.C. Yes, a lot of my family had said, oh no, why did you do that? You put us in a bad position. They didn't say, why did you stand up? They said, oh, you've done this and we're in a bad position. And I said, would it be different if Amit Sosan was Anila Ali? Would it be different if that girl was a Muslim or Pakistani? Would you ask me the same question, why I stood up? And when I told them what Hamas had done and how my heart bleeded when I saw Allahu Akbar and the mother saying, you will go to heaven. I killed 10 Jews with my bare hands. Astaghfirullah. That is a violation of my religion. And God knows we will not be silent until we hold these people responsible for stealing our religion. They did it on 9/11. They're doing it again. And we will not allow Hamas to educate our children in the mosque today. We're not going to stand it. And we have a war. We have a war going on against extremism, but we don't use sword and we don't use violence. We use words. Iftar on Saturday. We have the Arab Israelis coming. We were the only Muslim organization. When October 7th had not happened, we signed the Abraham Accords. President Trump invited us, and my people in California and American people were saying, don't go there, it's Trump's initiative. And we said, no, it is a peace initiative. It is an outside-the-box solution. Let's find a peaceful way. Do you have a better way? I don't want any kids to die. But the difference between many of the people that you see today holding up Hamas flags are they're sad when it's a Palestinian or a Muslim kid, a Palestinian kid. But they're not sad if it's an Israeli kid, and I question them. But to tell you the problem, and which is what gets me started, it's been 15 years that we have been fighting the invisible Hamas tunnels in America. I'm sure you all know they exist. They are very strong, very well funded with our own money and the money coming from these Arab countries that once upon a time were funding the terrorism in my country, in Zeba's country, in Surai's country, because they wanted them to believe in the Muslim Brotherhood, in the radical Islamist theory, Al-Qaeda, Daesh. All of those people believe in the caliphate. And Israel is just in the way. And I'm not just saying that because I've been reading. I'm saying that because they told me. They told me that if you don't leave your support for Israel, we're never going to let you win. We're going to bring down your organization. And God knows there were 2 people in counterterrorism that supported us. And that is why we are not dead today. That's why Iranian regime has a fatwa on me. Because in Pakistan, Pakistanis are saying, why can't we be friends with Israel? If UAE Muslims can be friends, if Saudi Arabia can be friends, Saudi Arabia is the holy custodian of our religion. That's our holiest place, and they want to be friends with Israel. What's wrong with us? 240 million people want to be friends. That is why the mullahs, the imams, and I love them in Pakistan, they invite me. They have told me, Ahle Kitab, nobody should touch them. And what they're doing is wrong. And let me also tell you that the Arabs have also realized that they did wrong. But they don't have the manpower now to reverse engineer the damage they've done. And in America, the movement against Israel has gone. Anti-Semitism is a symptom. What they really want is the Muslim Brotherhood. Hissam Aloush, you may know him. Nihad Awad, you may know him. What's that lady's name? Linda Sarsour. Do you think that I have come across them and challenged them? Absolutely. My war is not today. It started the day I came to America, and I heard that in the mosque. They have told Muslims that the Jews are cursed, and the Muslims are believing it. When my women in my organization resigned because they went to the mosque during Ramadan and they said, oh, you're with that organization, we're not going to let you in the mosque. You know what my heart said? We need to have more mosques. We need to have other mosques. You want to preach hate there? That's a government's problem. But I want to create a Muslim Shura Council where women are like us are included. We have been silenced, we have been abused, we have actually almost been killed. Lori Saroya Hadri, the head of the Muslim Islamic Council on American Islamic Relations, he asked her for a sexual favor. Who shut her down? Why aren't all of you lining up with me outside the New York judge's office? Why did he give her a couple of $1 million to shut her up? Who made him hide the list of donors that CARE has in America? Where is the justice for these women? Where is the justice for us? I can't even tell you how many times they have harassed my family. When President Obama chose me as the Muslim ideal woman, she is a perfect example of how Muslims you should be. I go to the White House, there are 5,000 letters against me. There are thousands of text messages against me. And who does it? Council on American Islamic Relations. Every time I go and somebody invites me to speak at a campus, what does this organization do to all of us? They can't try to cancel us out. They say, oh, don't trust them because she was supporting CVE. CVE is the government's policy on countering extremism to protect America. I will support it. I will stand with FBI. FBI has enough evidence right now that Kash Patel can open up all the evidence he has. There is to indict him and all the people. Muslim Public Affairs Council, they told me when I was meeting Ambassador Oren, he called me and he said, you want to go with the Jews? You know you can't trust them, sister. They'll use you and they'll throw you. And you know what? These Jews, they are cursed in the Quran. You can't even eat with them. And I said, what? That was the last time I asked my Arab CARE brothers for any advice. But our movement is too small. We cannot go into those, we cannot destroy the invisible tunnels in America. We need you. We need you to come stand with us. Why are you standing separately? And ask for justice for us. I want a Muslim Shura Council where Soraya can lead. We know enough about our religion. Why aren't we included? Why are we excluded? Why are Muslim women like me told you can't come to the mosque? What happened last year? Pathetic. Interfaith relations should never be halted, no matter what, even if there's a war in India and Pakistan and Gaza and Israel. Their interfaith relations are our religion. Yours too. We are all one human race. What did the Imam do? The one South Asian Imam who came to our interfaith iftar with 250 people after October 7th. He came, he led the prayers. And you know what happened? The next day, they made him give a statement. Sister Anila forced me to come because they saw an Israeli flag in the synagogue. And he rescinded all of that and said Anila is bad and Anila's organization. Where's the justice for us then? We need you to stand with us. Don't stand behind. Don't be there. Come and join our war. This is a war to save America. This is a war to save our children from becoming Hamas. I ask you to help me. This is very, very critical stage in our life in America. It's a turning point. We need you.